I'm John McKee, editor of Messianic Apologetics, messianicapologetics.net. And I would like to welcome you to this episode of Messianic Insider, your theology and news roundup for July the 30th, 2025. We have an important theological topic we will be reviewing today, and there is, of course, some significant news involving not only the Middle East, the American home front, but also other things around the world. So let's get started on our theology roundup. This is something which ran across my feed before leaving for the Messiah 2025 conference. It's from June the 25th, CBE International. That's Christians for Biblical Equality. They are an egalitarian organization. So I'd like to read this little meme to you. Are men the only protectors? Complementarians define the masculine nature to protect as a natural God-given responsibility to step forward and put himself between the assailant and the woman. While calling men to protect women is not bad in itself, the problem becomes when we presume that protecting others is primarily a masculine ideal rather than a Christian ideal. It makes it seem like women who protect men are acting outside of God's design, and that men who accept their care and protection are missing the mark. However, a willingness to put one's life on the line to protect others is the nature of Jesus Christ, who gave up his life for our sake. It is his sacrificial example that we are all called to follow. Philippians 2:5-8. Jesus and Paul tell all Christians to sacrifice themselves out of love for one another. John 15:12-13, Ephesians 5:1-2, 1 John 3:18-19. We should not be surprised when the Bible honors women for risking their lives to protect men. Okay, so this is a little provocative for many of you. Are men the only protectors? What does this get you thinking about? What does this get you to start to begin to comment on in your mind? Perhaps question. Perhaps some people, in seeing something like that, would question the logic of the person who would draw those conclusions. None of us are able to learn why we believe what we believe unless we are challenged from time to time. And indeed, this meme here, and you'll be able to access it along with all the other news links when this episode is archived later today. This is something which should get us to begin to think a little bit. Now, when I saw this, and I recognized that it'd probably be a really good idea to comment on this for Messianic Insider, especially as one who does identify with an egalitarian ideology. What are two significant questions which we can take from this? I think the first question is, what kind of a body of Messiah do we want? What kind of a body of Messiah do we want when we look at men and women? Do we want a body of Messiah made up of strong men and strong women? Or do we want a body of Messiah made up of strong women and weak men? Or a body of Messiah made up of strong men and not so strong or even weak women? I think we can all agree that those of us who are spiritually regenerated, we know Yeshua as our Redeemer. We want a body of Messiah made up of strong men and strong women. So that's something which I naturally took away from that. And then theologically, the second thing which I took away from this, what did it actually mean when we see in Genesis that the woman Eve was created to be the man Adam's, what is commonly translated or approached as helpmate? Many of us have been taught, whether it's right or wrong, we'll see in a moment, that helpmate means some kind of a subordinate, that the woman is secondary to the man. Is that something which is sustainable from the Genesis narrative? That is something which has definitely been questioned for a number of decades, and it's something we have to take into consideration as we look into the future and as we have to each ask ourselves that question. What kind of body of Messiah do we want? I can tell you this in no uncertain terms, I want a body of Messiah made up of strong men and strong women. Doesn't mean that men and women are exactly the same. There certainly are different reproductive anatomies, but the last thing I want to see is a faith community made up of really strong men and not so strong women, especially with what we're getting ready to go into in the future, timelines to be determined. All right, so our teaching today is taken from one of our ministry publications, something you don't get to see that often, outreachisraelbookstore.com, and this is our resource, Men and Women in the Body of Messiah. And this principally has 3 chapters, one dealing with what are some of the major evangelical discussions and debates taking place regarding men and women. Another chapter discussing how does this lead us into some of the approaches present in today's Messianic community regarding men and women. And then a third analysis deals with the blight of polygamy or plural marriage you see in some of the more independent Hebrew roots types of settings, some of the non-Jewish Torah movements. So men and women in the body of Messiah answering crucial questions is an analysis which hopefully will give you some points of view you have never had to consider before. All right, so let me switch windows really quickly, and we will get into this issue of what a helpmate is from Genesis. Okay, here we go. Oh, no. Sorry about that. You just never know sometimes. Okay, so we're going to have to just bear with me for a moment as we hopefully will not have a technical issue again. Okay. Okay, there we go. I'm sorry about that. All right, so this is taken from our ministry publication, Men and Women in the Body of Messiah, and it does come from the Answering Evangelical Questions. So this reflects a lot of the current discussion and debate, men and women, gender roles, etc., as you will see in a great deal of evangelical Protestantism over the past couple of decades. So here, a common question. Eve was created to be Adam's helpmate. Does that not mean that a wife is to serve in a secondary submissive role to her husband? All of us in our reading of Genesis chapter 2 have encountered where Eve was created by God to be Adam's helpmate or helper. And as has been seen in much traditional or customary Christian thought, this implies that Eve was to be Adam's subordinate. This is a position which continues to be held by most complementarians. Egalitarians frequently challenge the conclusion that helper means a subordinate or inferior. Adam, the first human, is seen giving names to all of the animals brought before him. Genesis 2:19. It is then narrated, and the man gave names to all the cattle, and to the birds of the sky, and to every beast of the field. But for Adam there was not found a helper suitable for him. Genesis 2:20, New American Standard. As Adam was encountering all of the different animals, he saw both male and female of various species, and had to wonder if he would be the only of his kind. It has been recognized that it was not good for Adam to be alone, Genesis 2:18, and so a deep sleep falls upon the man, and the first woman or Eve is created from his rib or side, Genesis 2:21 and 22. Adam is ecstatic at the arrival of the woman, noting how she came from him. This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man. Genesis 2:23, New American Standard. Both complementarians and egalitarians should agree on the ontological equality of men and women from Adam's statement in Genesis 2:23. When Genesis 2:20 communicates, but for Adam no fitting helper was found, New Jewish Publication Society version, was Eve intended to be Adam's subordinate as the Ezer Kenegdo? The Theological Word Book of the Old Testament offers some rather general options. While this word designates assistants, it is more frequently used in a concrete sense to designate the assistant. Genesis 2:18, 20, where Eve is created to be Adam's helper. As to the source of the help, this word is generally used to designate divine aid, particularly in Psalms, Psalm 121, 1 and 2, where it includes both material and spiritual assistance. At one side of the spectrum, the Hebrew Ezer is used to describe Eve being the helper of Adam. And at the other side of the spectrum, the term Ezer is used to describe God as some kind of a helper. Complementarians, while rightly recognizing the infinitely higher value of the woman in contrast to the animals, do widely conclude that the woman as the man's helper means that she is a secondary assistant to him and not an equal partner. Egalitarians, believing that the first man and the first woman were created by God to tend the garden together as equals, would stress how Ezer or helper is used in contexts where an obvious superior force comes to the aid of another. Consider the following thoughts offered by Alice Matthews in Gender Roles and the People of God. Quote, the first Hebrew word, transliterated Ezer, appears 21 times in the Old Testament. When we look at all of these occurrences together, we get a sense of its meaning. In two cases, it is used to describe the woman Eve, Genesis 2:18-20. And three times it refers to nations to whom Israel appealed for military help when faced with a powerful enemy. Isaiah 30, verse 5, Ezekiel 12:14, Daniel 11:34. In the remaining 16 cases, it refers to God as our help. Exodus 18:4, Deuteronomy 33:7, 26, 29, Psalms 20, verse 2, 33:20, 70, verse 5, 89:19, 115:9, 10, 11, 121:1, 2, 124:8, 146:5, Hosea 13:9. God is the one who comes alongside us in our helplessness. Any idea of inferiority here is untenable. God is not subordinate to his creatures. While many Christians see Eve's function as a subordinate, the word ezer does not support that idea. Eve was not created to serve Adam, but serve with him. Unquote. It is impossible to argue that Eve, as helper, was created to be Adam's superior, even though God, as the helper of Israel or of people generally, is, as the eternal one, obviously superior. However, the common complementarian view that Eve being created as Adam's helper means that she was only a secondary assistant can easily be challenged. Earlier in Genesis 1:27 and 28, it is narrated how the creation of human beings involved not only both male and female being created in the image of God, but also both male and female were to subdue and exercise dominion over the earth jointly. To egalitarian readers, man and woman were originally intended to rule over the earth as equals. Thus, Eve, being Adam's helper, meant that she was to be his significant ally, indeed serving along with him. God created humankind in his image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the air and over every living thing that moves upon the earth." Genesis 1:27 and 28, New Revised Standard. All right, so that is not an extensive analysis regarding men and women, but it does highlight the point that the woman was created to be the man's helper. And frequently the terminology used for helper seen throughout the Hebrew scriptures describes God as the helper of Israel. And of course, in this case, God, being an infinite, eternal being, is the superior of Israel. So when the woman is described as the man's helper, to argue that the woman was to be his inferior would not be a good position to take. Rather, both man and woman were created as equals. God's original intention was for them to subdue the earth, exercise dominion over it as co-equal. And indeed, what we want to see in the body of Messiah, strong men and strong women. That's something which I was definitely raised with by my parents. It's an ideology which is deeply rooted in the value system of my family. We don't see it as much as we probably should in today's Messianic community. But as we contemplate the future, as we contemplate increasing difficulties, do you want to see a body of Messiah made up of strong women and, strong men and not so strong women? Of course not. It doesn't mean men and women as equals are exactly the same. They are not. They have different reproductive anatomy, but they do have the same amount of brain capacity, reasoning capacity, and ability to lead. This is not going to be the last time we discuss the issue of men and women. It will come up from time to time in issues like what we just discussed. And of course, at OutreachIsraelBookstore.com, we have our ministry publication, Men and Women in the Body of Messiah, which this little short teaching has been taken from. All right, so that concludes our theology roundup. Now let's get into some news. And there's a lot of news going on right now. I saw some news before getting started from Washington regarding the whole Russiagate issue. We'll probably deal with that immediately tomorrow, as more things will come out. But there's the ongoing situation, Israel, Gaza. There are some maneuverings in the world to recognize a Palestinian state. We've got the earthquake, which took place in the Pacific. And then, of course, we've got some other things we just have to be aware of. We always do the news roundup after the theology roundup because news is something which is always time sensitive. And because it's time sensitive, it necessarily changes. And once again, all the links I'm about to go through, you'll be able to access those later today when this episode is archived at MessianicApologetics.net. All right, from Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, my statement on the humanitarian crisis in Gaza and our plan for peace, including the recognition of a Palestinian state. So we know that France has committed itself to recognizing a Palestinian state, and now here we have the British Prime Minister committing the United Kingdom government to recognizing a Palestinian state. Now, there are questions about, is he doing this because of domestic politics or not? But this is what concerns a lot of us. The UK government has said they're going to recognize a Palestinian state. All right, I had this come across my feed, and this was interesting. We do stay up to date with extraterrestrial, Genesis 6, Nephilim type issues. A new Harvard-linked paper proposes a bold theory. Some UFOs might not be from outer space, but from hidden intelligent beings living on Earth. Called the crypto-terrestrial hypothesis, it suggests these beings could be ancient human civilizations, native non-human species, long-hidden extraterrestrials, or even supernatural entities. Okay, now what caught my attention regarding this is it's some kind of a Harvard study. We know, and we're actually going to have a story in just a moment, Charisma Magazine, among others, and Time Headlines as well, they frequently do pick up on this kind of stuff. Just file it away. We don't know. I think a lot of us are willing to be humble enough to recognize that there are a lot of things involving the universe, its vastness, that we do not know as God's people. And there will be things revealed to us about the greater universe when Yeshua returns. Not saying any of this is accurate per se, but if part of the end time scenario involves a return of the Genesis 6 Nephilim, expect to hear some very interesting explanations about where these people come from, who they might be, etc. So we just file this away and we just monitor this kind of stuff. From Open Source Intel, yesterday, July the 29th. There's a new push now in Western media. Israel, it's time to wrap it up. What happens to the hostages? Who controls Gaza? And their commentary here is, what the F does wrap it up mean? Now, I know that many of us have been, since October the 7th, we've been praying for the release of the hostages taken by Hamas. We also have been praying that this conflict can conclude as quickly as humanly possible. I think that's a little different than, hey, Israel, you just need to stop this, and some of the genocide rhetoric which goes along with that. I mean, all of us, every world leader, when we see a military conflict take place, our natural inclination is, what do we have to do? What are our objectives? How do we conclude this, accomplishing those objectives, and how can we do it as quickly as humanly possible? Everybody wants peace. Everybody wants a ceasefire. Everybody wants this over. But how much of the push is unrealistic? From Visegrad 24, just following up, Keir Starmer announces that the UK will follow France's lead and will recognize a Palestinian state in September. Macron and Starmer have decided to reward Hamas for launching a terrorist attack in which more than 1,000 civilians were murdered and 251 hostages were taken. From open source intel yesterday afternoon, July the 29th, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt have issued a joint statement urging Hamas to disarm and relinquish control over Gaza. Very interesting indeed. We always have to remember that this is an unfolding situation. France, United Kingdom, we're going to recognize a Palestinian state, but here you've got some Arab Muslim powers. Hamas, you need to disarm, and you need to turn over control of Gaza to somebody else, presumably. July the 29th, this is from Israel News Pulse. Netanyahu revealed that the U.S. has officially permitted Israel to seize parts of Gaza. Israel has never had a more loyal friend than Trump. We know that the United States sees things a little differently regarding the Gaza situation and what's to be done with Hamas. Will Israel be able to annex parts of Gaza? We'll wait and see. This is important to pass along. You can watch this clip later. The Saudi foreign minister calls out Qatar's direct involvement in terrorism. The Qataris harbor and shelter terrorists. That is unacceptable. There is a list of terror financiers living in Qatar. The Saudis have woken up. Why doesn't the rest of the world? Now, this might be from the past, so it's a little dated, but it's something to keep in mind here. Things are never as simple as we want them to be. So step back a few paces. Don't have an attention span that's only a day or two. We're dealing with something that's been around for years, decades even. And so how does that make some of the new developments different, notable at the very least? Okay, this is passed on by Benny Johnson. Breaking: Ghislaine Maxwell is willing to testify before Congress, but only if granted immunity and other major conditions per her lawyer's letter to House Oversight. Full immunity, no interview at her prison. Committee must submit all questions in advance. Interview only after her Supreme Court and habeas petitions are resolved. So this, of course, involves the Epstein issue. What's going to come out of that? We know that Ghislaine Maxwell has already been interviewed at prison by the Deputy Attorney General. Are we going to see something much more public, and what would result from that? I repeat my position, whether you're on the left or the right, regardless of what comes out, the trust of people in general in government, industry, entertainment, sports, and all these other fields will plummet. Who can we trust? Who isn't compromised in some way? That's why our ultimate leader is who? The Lord God, the King of Kings. That's who our ultimate trust is to be placed in. All right, from Charisma. This is from this is from today, July the 30th. Aliens in Compton. Supernatural sightings caught on camera. So there may just be something out of this world happening in Compton, California. In a video shared to X by Blurry Creatures Project, footage from a woman's Ring camera showed something unusual walking by her house. In the right-hand corner of the screen, a holographic image of what would appear to be an alien simply walks by the house. Of course, this just gets a lot of people talking for certain, speculating. It talks about, this article at least, the Bible warns of a coming end times deception in the last days, one so powerful that it could deceive even the elect if possible, Matthew 24:24. Whether this incident is a trick of technology, a demonic manifestation, or part of a deeper spiritual agenda, believers must remember that Satan can disguise himself as an angel of light, 2 Corinthians 11:14. So, of course, you can look at this more in detail later on, but course, there are just the questions. Was this just, faked? Was this just misinterpreted? Shadows? Is there something real to this? And if there is something real, is it a genuine extraterrestrial? Is it some kind of demonic manifestation? And as I have said before, there are people out there, certainly younger people, evangelical conservative types, they're at least willing to entertain the question, given the antiquity and vastness of our universe, how do we know human civilization is the only sentient life? To which I politely respond, well, when the Lord returns, I guess we're going to find out a lot about the mysteries of the universe. I approach it from a position of humility. But these are the kinds of things we just file away, and we will wait and see. From Breitbart, yesterday, July the 29th. CIA director, more intelligence shows the Russia collusion hoax was a Hillary Clinton plan. More files may link failed 2016 Democrat presidential candidate Hillary Clinton to the origins of the Russia collusion hoax that targeted President Donald Trump. So the whole issue was, did the Russian government directly interfere in the 2016 election, or was this all just manufactured evidence in order to discredit President Trump at the time? This is, of course, a live wire issue now in Washington with some more developments just as we were getting ready to go live. And indeed, nothing good is going to come from this except people's trust in the government is going to plummet. Everybody's corrupt. Everybody's trying to cover up something. Everybody's trying to hide various secrets and various conspiracies or what have you. And to a lot of people, certainly in the realm of end-time prophecy, without wanting to speak presumptuously, this is the kind of thing which brings disrepute to the United States. Whether you are a patriotic American like I am, or you're just like, hey, America is reaping what it sows kind of thing. This is not good, but we need to be able to know what the issue is, and we need to be able to respond in a calm manner as believers. From the New York Post yesterday, and this involves the terrible shooting which took place earlier this week. Socialist mayoral frontrunner Zoran Mamdani is planning to axe an elite NYPD task force that charged into a Park Avenue building during Monday's deadly mass shooting if he takes over City Hall, despite expressing how grateful he was for the first responders after the attack. So, yeah, New York City, if he is elected as mayor, is getting ready to go through a major, major change. And this special task force, which was right on the scene and helped with the situation, he's planning to axe these people. That's not good. Okay, this is from CBN News yesterday. I'm sorry, this is from July the 28th. Israel's battle against radical Islam is clearly raging, but there's growing concern among Israeli leaders that people in the West don't understand they're facing a similar battle in a much more subtle form. Israel's Minister of Diaspora Affairs visited our CBN News studio in Jerusalem. He told us, I think it's very important for Americans to understand that there is a plan of the Muslim Brotherhood. They have a vision in 100 years to make America a Muslim state. And they're well underway in the UK, Belgium, and other spots in Europe. Indeed, other than Yeshua the Messiah, Jesus being the answer to so much of this, what kind of a world religiously could be on the scene in the next century? I know a lot of us are concerned about the rise of atheism, godlessness, apostasy, people throwing out the Bible as though it's fairy tales. But what kind of a specific dynamic does Islam bring to the future of the West? We don't know, but it does have some kind of a role to play in the last days. I don't know specifically right now what it is. I think we're just going to have to wait and see how that unfolds. But this is, of course, very concerning. And there are Muslim groups popping up all over North America right now. We have them in Texas, and they are in places not just where there is, secularism, liberalism, but where there's even a strong Christian element. And, people are very much concerned about that. It doesn't mean that your Muslim neighbor per se who lives across the street or you encounter at the supermarket is radical, but there are things which we need to take note of and we need to be concerned about. All right, let's change the subject just a little bit. This is from the Instagram channel Galaxies. What you're seeing here is the Korolev crater near the Martian North Pole. The crater is almost 51 miles wide and more than a mile deep. It holds roughly 530 cubic miles of perpetually frozen water ice, which is almost 5 times the volume of Lake Erie. Okay, so let's assume that this discovery is accurate and there really is water ice frozen on the Martian surface. The Lord tarries, within 2 decades or so, we're going to have a permanent human presence on the moon and on Mars. And in order to have a permanent human presence on a place as far away as Mars, you need water. You can't just take or port all the water you need from Earth. You need to have a localized water supply. That way you can have a sustainable presence, you can grow crops, that sort of thing. Once you have, whether it's in liquid or frozen form, water on Mars, of course, you can also extract the oxygen from the water to breathe. What's in the water? Is it just water which has been deposited by possibly a comet which landed on Mars? People are going to start asking questions. Is there some kind of microbial life, at least, frozen in the water? Something else frozen in the water, an indication that some kind of simple life is not just germane to planet Earth. A lot of questions come from this, and we need to be willing to engage with them as believers. I bring this up because, look, when I was in seminary, now almost 20 years ago, 2006, 2007, that's when you started to have to sort through the philosophical questions. What are we going to do when NASA finds microbial life in water on Mars, in water on one of the moons of Jupiter? What is that going to do to the early Genesis debates, creation, evolution, what have you? And for me, I like to be ahead of the curve on some of these discussions, not behind it. All right, from Visegrad 24. Netanyahu on the UK's announcement that it will recognize a Palestinian state in September. Starmer rewards Hamas and punishes its victims. A jihadist state on Israel's border today will threaten Britain tomorrow. All right, this is from late last night. Some of you are probably aware of this. Multiple reports went out. This is the first one which came across my feed from open source Intel Defender. A massive earthquake measured at a magnitude of over 8.7, the strongest earthquake in the world since 2011, has struck off the coast of Kamchatka in Russia's Far East, with tsunami warnings having been issued for the coasts of countries across the Pacific, including Russia, Japan, and the United States, with advisories for Alaska, Hawaii, and the U.S. West Coast. So first of all, our prayers, our thoughts go out to those who are going to be directly affected by the tsunami. May they be able to escape to higher ground. We also pray that the economic impact of this isn't too drastic. But yeah, this is very serious. A lot of people, certainly in prophecy, they like to refer to Yeshua's words in the Olivet Discourse. You'll hear about wars and rumors of wars, famines, pestilences, earthquakes, etc. We need to be aware that as significant as this is, and as much as we need to be praying for those affected by it, it's only been in the past 2 centuries or so that human beings have been recording the impact of earthquakes and other natural disasters. So regardless of whether this is the largest earthquake or one of the largest earthquakes ever in human history aside, a lot of us are affected by how they've only been recorded en masse for not so long. So how much of this is actually a repetitive pattern which goes back, millennia. But we do pay attention to this. It's not just the earthquake itself we pay attention to. We also have to keep in mind how people are living along the coastlines in a much more concentrated way than they ever have before. There's going to be an obvious economic impact. Earthquakes are not just isolated to a natural disaster. There's human, industrial impacts as well. All right, from Newsmax, yesterday, July the 29th, Jeffrey Epstein-linked convicted sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell said she'll testify before Congress if she is offered immunity and receives the questions in advance. Okay, so this is just more in that unfolding drama. Regardless of what happens, it's not going to be good. That is a fact. Okay, now this is from WeatherTrack US. Of course, this is something which can change because science always does. The earthquake off the coast of Russia has been upgraded again to M8.8. Now, the 6th largest earthquake in recorded history. So, yeah, nobody needs to underplay how significant this is. But recorded history. So there's a lot of unrecorded history, which we don't have extant. So we can't compare and contrast, millennia in the past. But this is a severe thing. We need to pay attention to it. And again, our thoughts and our prayers go out to all of those who are affected by it. This was kind of interesting. I thought I should pass this along from the Instagram channel Explore Tech World. Meet Gilbert, and that is spelled with 2 L's. A 3D printed robot fish designed by student Eleanor McIntosh at the University of Surrey. Okay, robot fish. That sounds kind of interesting. What is it for? The salmon-sized swimmer mimics real fish but eats microplastics instead, filtering polluted water through mesh that traps even the tiniest plastic bits. And yes, some of you all know that whether it's the Atlantic or the Pacific or the Indian Ocean, there is a garbage problem in various places with a lot of plastic. It needs to be cleaned up. You don't have to be a hyper-environmentalist to recognize that. So here, open source and free to print, Gilbert is a student-made solution already making waves in UK lakes, proof that powerful change can start in the classroom. And here the UK has created a robot fish that eats ocean plastic and powers itself by digesting it, eliminating the need for battery. So yes, I absolutely think these kinds of developments are positive. Okay, this is from today. This is from yesterday, July the 29th. Breitbart. U.S. President Donald Trump told Breitbart News exclusively Monday that Chinese President Xi Jinping has been clamoring for a meeting in person with him soon, and that may happen as soon as sometime this year, either in China or at the White House in the United States. And of course, Xi Jinping, president of China, has not been able to meet with President Trump in person since he returned to the White House. There are a lot of questions, not just security related, but also economic, which they need to discuss, because even though they can talk on the phone, presumably at any time, you know that there's something about an in-person, person-to-person communication of world leaders that can really get some matters taken care of. So I thought that was important to pass on. From Visegrad 24, this is kind of op-ed from this morning, July the 30th. Anyone who calls Gaza the world's greatest humanitarian catastrophe is ignorant about world affairs. The civil war in Sudan has caused the largest humanitarian crisis ever recorded, according to Rescue.org. Yet no one cares about the people of Sudan or about the Muslim Brotherhood affiliated General al-Burhan, whose war has led to the tragedy of the Sudanese people. More than 12 million people have been displaced since April 2023. More than 24 million people in Sudan are facing acute food insecurity. Over 635,000 people are experiencing famine conditions and a heightened risk of death. The dead in Sudan outnumber Gaza's entire population. As the saying goes, no Jews, no news. Indeed. Look, we don't want to downplay the Gaza crisis, which it's a mess. But there are other situations on planet Earth that are much greater. And why do they not gain a lot of the attention of the global community? Well, according to this, it's because the Jewish people are not involved, and it's not something people can focus their anti-Semitic energies upon. That's why. Also from Visegrad 24, today, July the 30th, Malta will follow France and the UK in recognizing a Palestinian state during the General Assembly of the United Nations in September. Okay, so who else is going to be joining France, the United Kingdom, Malta now? We'll wait and see. We did report yesterday that Germany has said no. Of course, we know that from the news cycle, things can and do change. All right, now, this is something which needed to be passed along from open source intel. French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot. For the first time, Arab countries and those in the Middle East condemn Hamas, condemn October the 7th, call for the disarmament of Hamas, call for its exclusion from Palestinian governance, and clearly express their intention to normalize relations with Israel in the future. Okay, so we have seen some governments, France, UK, Malta now say, we're going to recognize a Palestinian state. But now we're beginning to hear reports that Arab countries, they're condemning October the 7th. They want Hamas gone, and they're willing to normalize relations with the state of Israel. So let's look at this more multilaterally here. And again, I would stress, of course, world events can change, but these are some other dynamics perhaps a couple of days ago we were not really having to think through. And of course, immediately, and this came across my X, formerly Twitter feed. You can look at all this in great detail, but it's from somebody who is saying, church, it's happening. The actual framework for the two-state solution has now been formally launched. And of course, it involves recognition of Palestinian state, disarming Hamas, condemnation of Hamas, and people concluding that, church, we're witnessing the foundation of the covenant with many. We are seeing the very thing that will trigger the 7-year tribulation, the 70th week of Daniel, the time of Jacob's trouble, with 3 exclamation points. If that moment is this close, how much closer is the rapture of the church? Okay, so why do we cover this kind of news? We cover it to stay grounded because immediately you see people coming to the conclusion that recognition of a Palestinian state, condemnation of Hamas, possible removal of Hamas, possible recognition of Israel by different Arab powers is going to necessarily lead us to the 70th week of Daniel and, of course, the pre-tribulation rapture. When some of these things do not necessarily happen the way this person is anticipating, what does it bring? It brings a lot of discredit to the prophetic message of Holy Scripture. Yes, we need to be monitoring things, but I have heard these kinds of claims for several decades by now. We need to pay attention, but we also need to keep our speculation at a bare minimum. Now, one of the things I would like to bring out is how the fall high holidays are, 5, 6, 7 weeks away. And with that, we know that every year there's a heightened sense of speculation regarding the pre-trib rapture among a lot of people. Every year I have been in the Messianic community, there's a group of visitors who show up on Rosh Hashanah who possibly expect the rapture to take place, right? Some of you all are familiar with that as well. And so next week on Messianic Insider, if things do not change, we're going to be addressing some of the top 5 reasons often given in support of the pre-tribulation rapture. And we're going to examine them and demonstrate why they are not as accurate as proponents of pre-trib commonly think they are. Okay, we've got 5 more stories to go through. This is from USA Today on Instagram. Some of you all may have seen this. Quoting from Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's a representative from Georgia, a Republican. It's the most truthful and easiest thing to say that October 7th in Israel was horrific and all hostages must be returned. But so is the genocide, humanitarian crisis, and starvation happening in Gaza. Now, here, if she had just said, but so is the humanitarian crisis and starvation happening in Gaza, a lot of us would say, yeah, I mean, this Gaza situation is terrible. And we need to see a resolution to this. But she is a Republican now who's used the term genocide. And the conclusion here is Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, Republican Georgia, said there is a genocide happening in Gaza, becoming the first Republican lawmaker to use the term to describe the ongoing humanitarian crisis in the enclave. Some of us don't really care for Marjorie Taylor Greene, and she is someone who from time to time has been known to entertain unsustainable conspiracies. But we'll see what else she says in the future. Yes, there's a crisis in Gaza. It needs to be taken care of. The biggest crisis is all these people need to have an encounter with the living God and his Messiah, Yeshua. But is there really a genocide intended to physically wipe out every single Arab Palestinian? I don't think so. Okay, so this has been passed on by Ihab Hassan, Palestinian Christian human rights activist from the Times of Israel. In first, entire Arab League condemns October 7, urges Hamas to disarm at 2-state confab. He notes, unprecedented Arab and Muslim countries, including Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Egypt, Jordan, and Turkey, signed a declaration condemning, for the first time, Hamas's terrorist attack on October the 7th and calling on Hamas to release all hostages, disarm, and end its rule over Gaza. Now, all of us agree that seeing Hamas removed from Gaza would be a very, very good thing. And if the Arab and Muslim countries can be responsible for pushing them out, countries such as Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Egypt, Jordan, Turkey, that would be great. Of course, we know that some of this could just be rhetoric, and tomorrow we could be in the same mess we were today. All right, passed on from Open Source Intel, our good friend Candace Owens. Oh, Candace Owens calls Israelis other than human and demons for fighting an Islamist terror group that refuses to release hostages or disarm. Meanwhile, she's silent on Hamas, the Houthis, and actual atrocities happening in Sudan, Syria, Somalia, Nigeria, Yemen, and Afghanistan. Yeah, all of us for many years are going to wonder what in the hell happened to Candace Owens. Why did she go off the deep end? So a lot of people don't like Candace Owens. I mean, just focuses all of her attention on Israel and the Jews and isn't, at least balanced, saying that, yeah, I think that Israel can go a little too far sometimes, but there are all these other situations in the world too. I think she wouldn't get as much criticism if she did that. From Open Source Intel, for the first time, the entire Arab League has condemned the October 7th attack and called on Hamas to release all hostages and lay down its arms. Okay, hopefully, I I don't know about you, but I pray for the removal of Hamas from Gaza. Is it going to happen? We'll wait and see. This is why people are coming to some of the prophetic conclusions that they are. Okay, and then finally, this is also from open source intel today, 11:05. Iran wire, 40 days into the Iran-Israel conflict, Iran's economy is collapsing. Its currency has plummeted, the stock market has crashed, and inflation is at record highs. In contrast, Israel's shekel is gaining strength and its markets are rising. Yeah, and who are the people who suffer the most from the Iranian regime? It's the people, and it's their economy. That's what suffers the most. And so, yes, we pray that perhaps someone like the exiled Crown Prince can return as the Shah and oversee a transition to democracy of some kind. Is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? We don't know, but we know that the Middle East is a very complicated place, and we need to certainly maintain our attention on what is happening. One of the main reasons, and I've said this before, we do the news roundup every day. Now, and of course, news changes. Sometimes it's religious news taking place, the Christian world, the Jewish world, something like that, the Messianic world. Sometimes the hot spot is the Middle East. It's Israel, Russia, Ukraine. Could be in Asia, could be here on the American home front. But we do this monitoring every day so we can stay grounded. We don't rush off to conclusions others rush off to, who often don't pay attention to things over the long term. And we can be realistic because a lot of people get stirred up because they're not really paying attention. And then something dramatic happens and they're not able to recognize, okay, something dramatic has happened. It's important to take note of it. But is this the first time something like this has occurred? Sooner or later, we are going to see some end-time related events take place. I have no doubt of that at all. And we need to be watching, but we need to stay realistic, stay grounded, and as God's people, be focused on the matters of His kingdom, the objectives of the kingdom of light, not the kingdom of darkness. All right, so we did cover a lot today. Tomorrow, we're planning on a much more extended theology roundup, so just keep that in mind. It's a topic I'm sure some of you all will very much appreciate because I get asked about it quite a bit. As always, on behalf of Outreach Israel Ministries and Messianic Apologetics, I would like to sincerely thank you for your ongoing prayers, encouragement, and donations toward all of our ministry efforts. You can give online at outreachisrael.net/support. We'll see you again tomorrow with another episode of Messianic Insider. Until then, may God bless you, shalom, and take care.